Hey there, Sports History fan. Arnie Chapman here from the Sports History Network. Now, before you jump into this episode, I wanted to share with you an exciting giveaway we have going on with Home Field Apparel. We have a digital $50 gift card to homefieldapparel.com for one lucky fan of the Sports History Network. All you got to do is head over to sportshistorynetwork.com/giveaways to sign up. Again, that's sportshistorynetwork.com/giveaways.
It's another episode of the official PFRA Podcast, that is the Pro Football Researchers Association. Jon Bozeka and George Bozeka along with you as always. We took a holiday hiatus away from the podcast. If you appreciate alliteration, you appreciated what I just said there. As I said, Jon Bozeka, George Bozeka along with you. George, we've talked to a number of folks on the podcast over a course of time. We've had former players, we've had authors, and we've just tried to encapsulate the story of football through the people that we have on, and we're going to be doing that again tonight.
Yeah, we've got a former player tonight, Ray Ellis, who actually is from Canton, Ohio. Played at Canton McKinley. Then he went on to play at The Ohio State University, and from there he went on to the NFL, played for the Eagles, and played for the Browns during the Marty Schottenheimer, Bernie Kosar years.
Yeah, not just a guy that had a cup of coffee in the NFL, a guy that really, when you look at it, had an elongated career. I consider elongated career 5 years or more, and he was a guy who was in the league from 1981 to 1987, and there's going to be a lot of great stories there. Some really good Eagles teams in there, some really quality Browns teams that he played on, so I'm sure the stories are going to be great, plus talking to him about his college days, playing for one of the best to ever do it, and Woody Hayes, and I think Earl Bruce a little bit as well.
Yes, he's played for a number of legendary coaches throughout his career, and we'll get into that more during the interview.
So we'll have Ray Ellis join us now on the official PFRA podcast as we begin our discussion, and we pick it up from his first answer to our first question here on the podcast.
Well, it's interesting you asked me that because I just talked to my business partner back there from Canton, Ohio today. That's Dave Jingo. And Dave and I have been, we got a project we've been working on for some time now called Pro Sports Legacy. And we're going to be doing sports documentaries of players and throughout, the country who have been successful, and primarily we'll start off with football, but then we'll go to basketball too as well. But it's kind of interesting because this is how I want, players to be able to share their experiences with the world, and then in their own words. So you're going to give me a chance to kind of get started in a kind of a dress rehearsal. But I'm born and raised in Canton, Ohio, southwest side of town, as a matter of fact. Well, let me go back even further. When I was a real little kid, like prior to the kindergarten and first grade, I lived in the southeast side of Canton. Then when I started school, I went to kindergarten at Lathrop, and I say that because I have friends to this day. As a matter of fact, I walked into Hartford Junior High School when we did our Canton Outside of Canton food giveaway, and I saw probably my first best friend in my life, and that was a gentleman by the name of Gregory Allison. And Gregory is the uncle of Adrian Allison, who is working now, I think, for the Black colleges alongside of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And but it was those days, that young, I can go back to being in kindergarten and, playing football, throwing the football around. I don't know if we were playing, if we were just catching, what we were doing. But it was as early as kindergarten and first grade that I try to think back, look at a picture, or when I'm in the neighborhood, drive down the street, and it kind of brings back some memories, helps me kind of shake my memory to think about those days and times and what we did as kids for enjoyment. and football was one of those things. Then I moved from the Southeast over to the Southwest, and that's where things really kind of got started. I remember, first grade, and just looking back, thinking about, as I said, when you drive through the neighborhood or you see somebody, it kind of shakes your memory, jogs your memory. But as early as first grade, man, I remember, throwing the football around and being able to catch it. And when we were kids, you always played to win. And if somebody threw you a football and you didn't catch it, you dropped it, then when they're choosing teams, most of the time they're not going to pick you. If you're dropping the football, no, they're not going to pick you. So I could catch the football pretty good. So yeah, that's about first grade, watching TV and trying to emulate what those guys did. If they caught the ball, Paul Warfield, if he caught the ball, then I was trying to catch the ball like Paul.
Well, and did it have a profound effect on you, Ray, that you grew up in? I mean, for those that don't know, and obviously all of us being Ohio people, we know the importance of football in Stark County, but did that make even a more profound effect on you, the fact that the steps to the place that the greatest players go is that close to where you grew up? I mean, knowing that rotunda sat that far away, did that make it more important to you?
Well, the fact that it was in that town, and I was in that town, and as a kid, many times what we try to do is we try to latch on to things, and the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and I was in school in the early 60s. I'd say mid to late 60s. Yeah, so it was a thing. Whereas it was something that was going to be on TV, the Hall of Fame game, the Rose Bowl, those are things that people got excited about. So I got excited about it. And it was there in Canton. And I lived over by 9th Street Southwest and High Avenue, or two crossing streets. And I would walk from there, me and my friends in the neighborhood. We would walk from there to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. We would follow the parade all the way out, to the steps of the Hall of Fame, and then we'd have to walk back home. And then also I did that same thing at nighttime on Friday nights when Canton McKinley would play basketball or football. We would also, our parents, they let us walk, and that was a long walk, miles that we walked, and but we wanted to, it was something that was so appealing and exciting about it. It gave us so much energy that you wanted to be a part of that. You wanted to see it live, and so, that was special to be able to know that how special the Hall of Fame was at that time. It didn't really register to me what it really meant, but I knew it was something big. We all knew it was something big and exciting, and people came from all over the country and to Canton, Ohio, and it was a big parade. And that was something that, we wanted to be somewhat of a part of it, even if we could just say we saw it. And then as you got older, you could travel the country or the world and say that was a part of your hometown and your experience growing up as a kid. That was something special, yes.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because, I grew up on the Northwest End, and I was within walking distance of the Hall of Fame, too. I mean, it was just down the hill and then through Stadium Park.
Yours was a much shorter walk.
Yeah, I had about a mile, but I remember when I was a kid walking to Fawcett Stadium with my dad to see the games on Friday night, because that's what we would do. So, I think it was...
That was something special.
Yeah, it was. I think it was...
And George, you and I go back to when there were 4 schools. So,
exactly.
Of course, you went to Lehman. I went to the old McKinley and the new McKinley.
Yeah.
So, there were, 4 schools playing in those stadiums. And interesting, that's nice to hear you say that is, because I never had that experience, of you walking to the game with your dad. Man, that's something special. I'm an emotional guy, man. You might be emotional there. You missed that one. Yeah. But yeah, that's I would imagine to you that was something special. You and your pop walking to the game together.
It was.
And listen, regardless of what team it was, if it was McKinley, Timpkin, Lincoln, or Lehman, just going to Foster Stadium was a big deal for, I think, for everybody in that town of Canton, Ohio, to go to that stadium and watch the team play, knowing that they're playing in the same stadium that pro football players are playing in.
Well, Ray, next question I wanted to ask you is, I remember seeing you play as a sophomore at McKinley, and that would have been 1974. And we have a friend of ours in broadcasting that we'll talk about this high school player or that high school player, and we'll say, well, how good is he? And he's a former coach in the area, and he'll say, well, he's going to play on Sunday. So you were that kind of player, as I remember seeing you in 1974 for McKinley as a sophomore, because I remember people, that would sit around us at the game and saying, this kid's special. So, and I know you, throughout your career, played for a lot of legendary coaches. And one of them is one that maybe nationally isn't known, but John Breidwieser is obviously known in the state of Ohio. Can you tell us about your experiences with Coach Breidwieser and then starting as a sophomore at Canton McKinley?
Yeah, interesting you say that, and I thank you for those kind words, because growing up there in Canton, to get that kind of endorsement from people there who have a chance to see some of the greatest players that ever played the game, because the Hall of Fame game comes through there, and you see different teams, and then you see we pay tribute to the greatest players and we induct them into the Hall of Fame. So I respect the opinion of those in Canton, and it was special to me when I was a freshman. John Breidwieser, actually, when I was in 8th grade, Breidwieser came over to Hartford, where I went to school. I went to Sowers in the 7th grade, and this true story. I actually said to my mom, we were about to move, and I wanted her to move a part of town that would allow me to go to Hartford, because I knew that's where McKinley got their ball players from. So we actually got the assistance from a gentleman by the name of John Lucas. You guys may know that name there in the city. Yep. John assisted my mom and us in getting a home, and we moved over to Hillview. And that actually was my 9th grade. The 8th grade prior to that, we didn't really have any assistance. My mom just found a house down the street from my grandfather's, and it was right on the border of the borderline of going to Hartford and Sowers. And I went to Hartford and got over there, and I couldn't believe it that it was the season was over, but Coach Breidwieser came down and he spoke to several of us, not just myself, but I'm going to say there was maybe about 5 guys that he pulled in a room, and he told us that he wanted us, as next year we were going to be freshmen, and he wanted us to come up and work with the varsity during two-a-days. And we did that, and at the conclusion of those two-a-days, I was the one that he kept on the varsity to send the other, 4 guys back down to the freshman team. And then, so I had that experience of playing as a freshman on the varsity, and I was also I played multiple positions. I think I played everything in football at McKinley except I didn't play guard and I didn't play tackle. So I played fullback, I played tailback, I played quarterback, I played wide receiver, I played tight end, I played wing back, and then on the defense I played outside linebacker, I played corner. I didn't play safety. Interesting enough, that's a part of my story for later in life. But it was one of those things where Breidwieser was a cut off the block of Woody Hayes. He didn't mince his words at all. And as a matter of fact, my sophomore year, they moved me to wide receiver. When I was a freshman, Garland Burns was a starting varsity quarterback. Rock Hannes shared some time with him, and then I was, like 3rd or 4th team as a quarterback. And but then my sophomore year, Breidwieser decided they were going to go with Brock and as a starting quarterback, and he moved me to wide receiver. And it was a position I had never played, and so I was excited about that. But then there were times when we went to a tight formation, and the wide receiver had to be a tight end, and that tight end then had to block a linebacker. And let me just say, my courage at that time wasn't at its highest peak, and so I was a little intimidated as a sophomore, really a freshman, because it's summertime now. Okay, 2 days of my sophomore year, so school hasn't started yet. So I'm a sophomore playing varsity football and at McKinley, and I'm in the starting lineup, and I've got to block a linebacker or a defensive end on the other side of the ball. And I'm just a kid. I just got finished playing junior high school football, man. I'm not ready for McKinley, a starter. And Bry Weezer, this is a podcast, right? So I can say he lit into my ass.
Yeah.
On several occasions. He did not mince his words. I mean, Bry Weezer, just like Coach Hayes, oh my God. So it was one of those things where he was hard on me, and I never had a quarterback like that. My junior high school quarterback in the 7th grade, Mr. Stepanchis, Coach Stepanchis over at Sowers, he was tough too, man. I needed that. That was kind of a precursor to my expectation should be when I go on to to Hartford and McKinley, and then down to Ohio State. But it was a thing where at one time I came home from practice and I told my mom, this old coach, so I wanted to quit. My mother looked me dead in my eyes and told me, "You're not quitting. You said you wanted to play. You're going to play." It was a blessing. God had to know that she had to know that, I was scared. That's the reality of it. I was scared. This is McKinley. These guys are, they're like pro football players in Canton, Ohio. Back then, you're a superstar. You're a star in the city when you play for McKinley. And so I just, I was scared, but somehow or another I got my courage up. And that sophomore year was probably one of the best football years of my life, because of Bry Weezer stayed on me. And I had a Coach Newell. We lost him, God rest his soul. He pulled me aside one day. He said, "Ray, I don't want you to worry about what he says. Don't worry about him. I'll take care of him. You just go ahead and do what you're supposed to do." And Coach Newell was patient with me. He saw the talent in me, and Bry Weezer saw it too. He wouldn't have had me up there. They were just trying to get it out of me. And once they taught me the technique I was supposed to use, and I listened to them and I followed directions and I did it. I did it probably as good as you could do it based upon what they taught me. And I say that only because I remember watching the film and them showing the film, running it back, and then showing me actually blocking the guys in front of me and putting them on their back, only because I was doing it the exact way they taught me to do it. So, that's kind of special. Them guys there's some special kind of coaches there in John Bry Weezer. No doubt about it. I'd take him. He is, like I said, a younger version of a Woody Hayes, of a Dick Vermeil. He has all of that in him. Those are great coaches. Those are Hall of Fame coaches at the next level. And he certainly is a Hall of Fame coach at the high school level.
Ray, you are one of many guys that's in this fraternity, if you will. It's not a large one, but it is, of guys that played in the Massillon-McKinley game, played in the Ohio State-Michigan game, and then played in the Browns-Steelers or Eagles and Cowboys, Eagles and, Redskins back then. But, you're one of a few guys that had that honor. And I guess I would ask you, for those that aren't in that club, what was the best, what was the most intense, and what was it like being in those games? And from a young age, too, being thrown and thrust into a situation where you're traveling 8 miles west over to Massillon and you're playing in front of 22,000 people. Did that prepare you for Ohio State, Michigan, and then Browns, Steelers? Did that immediately give you that taste of what big-time football is like?
again, interesting that you say that, because personally, the way I feel is that from my experience of playing at McKinley, the Massillon-McKinley game got me prepared for every college game that I played in. And then the Ohio State-Michigan game got me prepared for every pro game that I played in, because that's how you turn it up, to that level. It's a competition. The competition at high school is like you play math. In college, you play Massillon every week in college. And then in pros, you play Michigan every week in the pros. And so those games were able to get me prepared for it. And the thing about it is, the coaches that I had my experience that taught me the game, they were the greatest coaches. Another thing I brag on Canton all the time whenever I go anywhere. I was in South Africa one time, and South America, and but I was in South Africa, and I remember some people stopping me and talking to me. I don't know why we were having some type of conversation, and I immediately wanted to make sure I let them know that I was from Canton, Ohio, where the Pro Football Hall of Fame was, and they were excited. They knew all about it. But yeah, being there at McKinley, there's not, because of my early experience of playing football at McKinley, I never walked in. It prepared me for every situation of sports competition that I ever participated in. I was never the one that was, a deer in headlights, because I've been there. Yeah, I played in front of 20,000 people at 15 years old. Some guys, play pro ball. They come from small schools, the small university, Division I schools, whatever. It could be still, Akron, I think, maybe Division I, but and they got a Hall of Famer out there, tight end, come out there, I believe. So if I'm not mistaken, did Winslow go to? It's somebody from up in Akron, I think, is in the Hall of Fame. But the fact of the matter is, McKinley just gets you prepared for that, and I thank God for that experience. And that's what I try to tell the guys when I come back and talk to them. Hey, guys, if you make it and you play here, you can play anywhere. You can play anywhere in the world, and you're as good. You're not going to find any competition any better than you're going to find right there. So that gives you kind of an indication of, what to expect if you haven't, got a chance to speak to somebody before. I'm always going to give them 100%. I'm going to keep it real with them. I'll let them know, hey, guys, you guys don't have any excuse. You don't have any excuse. You got everything you need right here. This environment right there in Canton, Ohio, this is it, man. This is every ingredient you need to get you prepared for professional sports, basketball and football. Yep.
Yeah, that's one thing I always share with people from outside, Canton, Stark County area is that, growing up in the 70s, which was sort of at its peak, you'd go to high school games, and as you said, 20,000 people always for the Massillon-McKinley game. But then I remember in 74, because I remember this game distinctly, the week before you played Massillon in 74, you played Warren in front of 19,000 people at Fawcett. It was like a whiteout. They had these white hankies or whatever, the Warren fans. And I think you guys won. I remember this game till forever, 19-0, I think you won. And then you got off to a slow start the next week at Massillon, got the lead, and then Massillon completed a pass they should have never completed.
You can tell he's a Canton guy, by the way.
With seconds to go. So, but I always remember those back-to-back games.
Yeah, Warren Harding. Interesting. I got down to Ohio State, and there was a couple guys from Warren that were down there. Interesting enough, though, nobody from Massillon. Nobody from Massillon.
That's interesting. Yeah.
But there was a kid from Massillon who did go to Ohio State, and I can't believe it, but I think he left. He did leave. He just, whether he dropped out of school, I don't know if he dropped out, flunked out, but he didn't stay. He didn't complete his 4 years or how many ever, 5 years eligibility. Well, if you're red shirt. But Harmon was the big back at Massillon. Yeah. And he actually went there a year before I did. And when I came down there, my freshman year, he was gone. But Kelton Danzler from Warren Harding was a great linebacker and at Ohio State, and KD was, he was good for me. It's one of those other things where also as an athlete, what you do is you kind of you look around the room and you kind of size up the competition. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, okay, we played them. Yeah, we beat them, so I'm okay. This guy over here, we played them, we beat them, I'm okay. So you kind of, you keep, at least I kept it to myself, but that's how I sized everybody up. It's like, oh, we beat them, so I'm not going to worry about those guys. We beat them, and so, and then the guys, there's the good people in the room. They give you respect where it's, deserved, and they'll be honest with people about, how good you were or how good you thought you were. So, but you got to go out and you got to prove it all over again in that environment. But that was always good for me. It's just like when I was at McKinley, when I was a freshman, I was up on the hill, the starting quarterback was Garland Burns. Now, Garland and I grew up on the Southwest as kids together, and I was 9 years old, 10 years old playing Mighty Might baseball. For some reason, Garland didn't play, but we played football against each other all the time. So now I get up to McKinley. He's a senior. I'm a freshman, but he's the starting quarterback. So that made me feel real comfortable. Another one of my friends became my friends then, took me under his wing as a freshman because he had played basketball with my brother. They played JV together. Charlie Weatherspoon, who's, I tell people now, has been a mentor of mine for over 50 years. Charlie kind of took me under his wings up there on the hill, which is what we called it, and which it was at that time is now gone. But when I was up there in the 2 days on the hill, Charlie kind of took me under his wings and embraced me. I sit down and have lunch with them, in the middle of the two, in between each practice, and in the room, in that room. One thing about, again, a special person in there. My secondary coach, his brother, a head coach in the National Football League. Wow, man, how special, Bill Knox was my coach, my secondary coach. His brother was Chuck Knox, and Coach Knox was, I could go down to Ohio State. Now I'm going to go down to Ohio State, and, I try to one-up everybody down there. I tell them, hey, man, my high school coaches, the secondary coach, his brother was the head coach in the NFL. So, I used anything I could, any advantage Ken gave me, I used it.
You mentioned going down to Ohio State, and you talk about John Brideweeser, as Ray Ellis is our guest, former Ohio State Buckeye, former Philadelphia Eagle, Cleveland Brown, played at Canton, McKinley in high school, from Canton originally. You mentioned going down to Ohio State. Was it a rude awakening walking into a Woody Hayes locker room? What was that like? First time Coach Hayes walked in, because we've all heard the stories of him tearing up his hats and throwing himself against lockers and screaming at people and doing things, so on and so forth. I want to know from somebody who spent time with him, what was Coach Hayes like?
Well, he was Coach Hayes was a very unique person because he kind of was like a grandfather figure to you in the locker room. When he wasn't coaching, he was very soft-spoken. He wasn't. He's not a real animated person when he's not coaching, but he had a button that he switch on and switch off. And I describe myself as that way too. I had a button that I switch on and switch off. I was a complete different person on the football field than I was, in just normal aspects of life. And, the thing about it with Coach Hayes is that when he was on that football field, he changed completely. It was a complete different person. He cared about you, but he talked about he always emphasized his military experience. And there was never, from his perspective, there was never room for margin for error. There was no error. He would talk to us about fighter pilots, and he would talk about, how, there was times where they prepared, for when they would be called into duty. And he would show using his hands to planes up in the air. And if it were determined that these planes were going to fly next to each other on a mission, and then they were supposed to turn left, make a left, and if the guy that was on the left was confused and didn't know what he was supposed to do, and he thought instead of going left, he was supposed to go right, well, the guy that was on his right, when he made the left, that meant they were going to crash. And he would give us those kind of examples of how important it is for you to always know your assignment. Never make mistakes. He did not like mistakes at all. And I took tremendous pride in that. And so I like to brag, and to this day that in the secondary at Ohio State, a winning performance was if you got an 80 or above, a 90 or above, you got a winning performance. It's like, it's an A. And I think I started 3 years, and every game I played in, I got a winning performance, except twice I got 89s. So I really appreciate that. And that was, again, something that I picked up from Coach Hayes, because I didn't want to be on his bad side. Because if you're on his bad side, he let you know. He let you know. And as a matter of fact, interesting enough, my freshman year after I played, I came home for the summertime. It was the only time I came home. It's the last summer I lived in Canton was the summer of 1977, 78. Yeah, so 78. And there was an all-star game there. And I think a kid from Ohio State, might have been second year. A kid was from Ohio State. Ben Lee was going to play in that game, and I came to watch the game. And somebody told me, I don't know who it was, but somehow somebody told me, I was walking around, and somebody stopped me and said that Coach Hayes was at the game. And I was like, oh, wow, really? And I later found out that somebody told Coach Hayes that I was at the game. And so I knew that if he was at the game and he knew I was at the game, that he shouldn't have to look for me. I should look for him. So I found out where he was sitting at, and I went over. And Coach Hayes was a great man. He was a great man. He made everybody just so, let them enjoy the moment. He knew who he was and what he was. The greatest coaches ever. Great role model. Great father figure. But he wanted to entertain those folks. So I walked up to him and I said, Coach Hayes, how you doing? And he said, good. He asked me, was I in shape? And I told him, yeah, man. I asked me how I'd been working. I said, yeah. So, of course, he gives me about 3 or 4 or 5 quick jabs to the stomach to see if I'm in shape. And, all those people there, they laugh because they think, you always hear about Coach Hayes punching something or somebody. So it was special to me, man. But, yeah, Coach Hayes, one of the greatest coaches ever. And, always wanted you to give 100% effort on the field, but also wanted you to exercise your football intelligence and not make mistakes.
Yeah. After you played for Coach Hayes his last 2 years at Ohio State, and then you moved on to another coach that sort of had a legendary career in Earl Bruce. And he actually coached in Massillon for 2 years. So what was it like with that transition going from, as you said, the legendary Woody Hayes to Earl Bruce?
Well, I remember when we were going through a little bit of, if I think back, I remember the process of us going on that search for another coach. And I'd heard that there was a coach that they were considering bringing back, was a guy by the name of Earl Bruce, of which I'd never heard of Coach Bruce before, even though I grew up there in Canton. I don't know if I were going to those Massillon McKinley games, if he was coaching then or not. I didn't know. But they had said that he was from Ohio State. He had been on the Ohio State staff before. But they said he coached at Massillon. So for me, in the beginning, I didn't, I wasn't too happy about that, but once he got there, And then he, because he came from Massillon, I kind of felt as if, I knew what I could expect from him in terms of this is somebody who's a winner for sure, because he came from Iowa. He came from, I think he at that time was he at Iowa. Did
Iowa
he leave
State.
Iowa?
I think
Iowa State.
Yeah.
He left Iowa State and came. So I didn't know much about Iowa State, but I just knew in terms of his competitiveness, I knew that he was going to be a winner, and I know what his expectations were going to be. So he came in, and then he, somebody who, went on to exceed the success that Earl Bruce had was my secondary coach that year, was Pete Carroll.
Oh,
Pete was our secondary coach, and then interesting enough, after Pete left, Pete stayed with us for 1 year. We went to the Rose Bowl. We lost that 17-16. We were undefeated. The next year, Nick Saban came in as our secondary coach. So there was, the tree of coaches that I had experience with, it's like if I had just an inch of talent, I certainly should have had some success because of who I was coached by. I could never use that for an excuse. As a matter of fact, that's I think the success I had, without a doubt, a reason of that is the guys who were teaching me how to play. If I would just listen to 50% of what they said and applied it, I should have been a decent ball player, and it worked out.
We wrote down the guys that you played for. We wrote down Schottenheimer, Vermeil. We wrote down Hayes. We wrote down Bruce. We obviously had no idea about Pete Carroll. I mean, that's a deep cut because people I don't even think knew that he spent time there. And then to spend time with Saban, I mean, could you see this? This is a question I always like to ask in a case like this, Ray. Is could you see from those early days of the way that they were? Could you see that they were going to go on to be great coaches? Could you, as a player, sense that about them?
I could say yes, and I will say yes, because like myself, there were certain things about them that probably for the average person wasn't that important, but to them, it was a stickler, and it was as I talked about, Coach Hayes not wanting to make mistakes. Coach Knox was that way when I was in high school, because Coach Knox always talked about us not making a fool out of, don't make an ass out of you and me. Don't assume. That's the word Coach Knox said. Never assume when you're in the secondary, because you're last line of defense. And if you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. So I kind of got that one. I said, okay, get that. Okay, spell the word assume. Okay, don't do that. All right. And then when I get to Ohio State, I got Coach Hayes, and again, the stickler for no mistakes, not, just wasn't going to have it, work ethic. Nobody's going to outwork us. We're going to work harder than everybody else. We're going to be prepared. We're going to play, the entire game until the game is over with. And then, after he left, and Coach Bruce took over, and he brought in Pete Carroll, and Pete only stayed with us for a year, and then he went and got a head coaching job. But, one thing about Pete in terms of preparation and, starting off fast from the very beginning, Pete did something that was very, special to me, that he and I kind of connected on early. And okay, I'm going to share this, but this is really for my I remember story, guys. I'm giving you some good inside scoop here stuff. When Pete came in at Ohio State, if you're a captain and you have a position that you play, and those drills where you go to, individual drills, position drills, the captain always leads those drills. And Pete wanting to get everything started off the right way and want to make sure that everybody's, setting the right tone for practice. Our captain that year, my junior year, going into the season when they came in the off season. So for that spring ball and everything, our captain was a guy named Mike Guess, and Mike started at Ohio State as a freshman. And when I came in, Mike took me under his wing, and I was really excited about, playing in the secondary with Mike Guess. But Mike had a chip on his shoulder that at times came across the wrong way. It definitely had nothing to do with the way he played the game. But Mike just at times had a chip on his shoulder, and Mike's mom, I think, was a school teacher. So it was kind of surprising that sometimes the way, he just conducted himself. And, there was a couple times that Coach Carroll said a couple things to him, and Mike didn't respond in the right way. And Mike was supposed to be leading the drills, and, he didn't have the right tempo. And Pete told him to step out, and he put me in. And he had me lead those drills. And from that point on, I led drills that whole entire year. And then the next season, I became the captain. And but that right there was just how much it meant to Pete Carroll to start his drills off the right way. You're going to set the tone because you're going to lead us in these drills, and I got to have it the right way. If it's not the right way, no, somebody else is going to do it. Even though you're the captain, that's okay. And that meant a lot to me, that he trusted me to set the tone for the guys. But at the same time, he was the other corner. He was the guy, he was on the other side of the field with me. And he's the guy that I looked up to before I got to Ohio State. He's only a year ahead of me, so he was starting as a freshman. And then now I'm in the secondary. I didn't start as a freshman, but I'm a sophomore. He's a junior. And I'm starting in the secondary with him. And, man, he just didn't get it right for Pete. And so I'm sorry, it might have been Mike's senior year, because Pete came when Mike was a senior and I was going to be a junior. That was the year we went to the Rose Bowl, yeah. But, yeah, and so those kind of coaches, there's things about when I got to pro football and Coach Vermeil, I saw a lot of Coach Woody Hayes and Coach Vermeil at that highest level. He was very intense, very, very, very intense. Practice, he believed in practicing hard and doing things the right way, bringing energy to practice to everything that you did, no mistakes, but a great coach, loved his players. Coach Vermeil and Coach Hayes were two men in my life that I knew that even though they were coaches and they were not your fathers, in their heart, you were their sons. And they felt that for you, and they wanted the best for you, and they wanted to bring the best out of you. And I couldn't have asked to play for two greater men in my life, Coach Hayes and Coach Vermeil. And I was so happy I was there at the ceremony when Coach Vermeil got inducted. In fact, I got a great picture of he and I from that night. But and those coaches are something special. I never say they could be like a father figure, but they're not trying to replace your father, because nobody replaces your father. But it's just like, okay, if a father was to be a coach, then this is what your father would look like, Coach Hayes or Coach Vermeil.
You obviously were playing in Philadelphia through 85. And I looked it up because I knew it was close, because I knew he played for the Packers. But you played with the Eagles during Reggie White's first year there. Did you have...
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, did you have interplay with Reggie? I know you were obviously you're in the defensive backfield, he's on the line, but did you have interplay with him since you're both part of the same unit?
Yeah, I did. And let me just say this. I've never seen before, and I've never seen since then, a defensive lineman as good as Reggie White. To this day, I've never seen a defensive lineman as good as Reggie White. Reggie White could literally pick a man, 275, 300 pounds, up and throw him in the air. And Reggie was not a man who lived in the weight room. As a matter of fact, he might have bypassed the weight room on a regular occasion. Reggie, he had natural ability. The guy gave him his speed, his quickness off of the ball, all that stuff. There was nothing that Reggie White could not do. Reggie White probably, at post-mortem, Reggie was inducted to the Hall of Fame. Reggie probably was the greatest defensive lineman ever. You can put anybody's film up, and nothing anybody else did that Reggie didn't do. Reggie could do it all. And interesting story. I got a Reggie White story. I think we're in Detroit, and we're having camp with the Detroit Lions. For whatever reason, they worked it out like that. And so we're going to Detroit, and I had some friends up there who played for the Lions. My teammate from Ohio State, Keith Ferguson. And so Ferg came over to visit me, and we went out for a little ride someplace or talked. And then when we were coming back, I got out of the car, we're coming back. There's a car in front of me, and there's somebody in the back seat, two people in the front and somebody in the back. Now, the person in the front seat, sitting in the passenger side, is our GM at that time, Harry Gamble. Somebody's in the back seat almost taking up the entire back window. I have no clue who this is. And then there's a guy in the driver's seat. The guy in the driver's seat, I later find out is, I think it's Patrick Fatah. But anyway, he later became the Philadelphia Eagles general manager. He was Reggie White's agent at that time. Reggie was the guy who was taking up the back seat, the entire back seat. And what they were doing is they were trying to work out a deal to get Reggie to become a part of our team, and they did. They worked it out, and so we go back after that, and next thing we know, this guy who was taking up that entire back seat is a member of the Philadelphia Eagles, and it's Reggie White. Yep. But
Ray, I was going to say you obviously had interplay with Reggie White, but I always find this an interesting question to ask people that played your position, as a defensive back. But was there a receiver that you went against or a guy that you went against in practice? And I'm immediately thinking of Harold Carmichael because you played on the same team with him. But was there a guy that you went against in practice that you were like, damn, that guy can play? And you just thought more of him as a player that was across from you?
Wow, that's interesting you say that, because there's been a couple of my experiences that I've had that happen to me, and I think about it, and I look how they play and how they perform, and I think about it in practice, and that's one thing about, in practice a lot of times, I feel personally, I always want to do the best I can in practice, so it will somewhat, simulate what a person should expect in the game. Like if a guy's just going 50% in practice, that's not going to help the guy who's on the starting side. If you're the scout team, and you're on a scout team, and the starters, you're going against the guy who's trying to prepare against the guy he's coming up against this weekend. You want to be competitive. You want to really challenge him and make him better. It's almost like the NBA All-Star game everybody's talking about. Come on, man, that was like a joke, It
was.
You don't want to be a joke in practice. You want to practice as good as you can against the people, make it hard for them. And that's what I liked about when I came to Cleveland in '86. It was like that in practice. We practiced like that. We didn't, we weren't physical in terms of the hitting, but in terms of the secondary and the passing and all that kind of stuff, we did that well. And so I'm going to say to you guys, okay, I was as competitive as I could be. I first got to Philadelphia, of course, Harold Carmichael was on that team. I'll never forget Wally Henry, who was a wide receiver out of UCLA, I think. And he played with Coach Ramel at UCLA. Wally was a wide receiver for the Eagles. The year I got to the Eagles, they lost the Super Bowl the year before. And this was the year after that. This was the next year. And I'll never forget, I was in practice against one time Wally Henry, and we didn't have any pads on this. We were just working out in the springtime. And I walked up to him, and I was going to do like a bump and run on him. And I didn't see anybody else doing this, but we had ran this kind of coverage at Ohio State. So I was going to do it to Wally. And I walked up to the line of scrimmage, and he saw that too, that I was doing that. And so what happened is he kind of backed off. And I was like, oh, okay. He backed off. And then we lined up against each other again, and you know, and we kind of went at each other. But for me, it was kind of an Ohio State UCLA kind of competition. You know, I was trying to, you know, compete with him in that way. During that same year, Harold Carmichael was a wide receiver, and I was a corner at Ohio State who was adjusting to play strong safety in the NFL, a position that they drafted me to play that I had never in my life ever lined up at any time at strong safety. And I had no idea how to play the position, but a guy from Ohio State, a guy by the name of Fred Bruni, coached and played at Ohio. Well, Fred was an all-time leading interceptor at Ohio State at one time. He was a secondary coach at Hill. He taught me how to play that position. But I lined up against Harold Carmichael, and again, try to bump and run him and do the best I could to, you know, make it challenging for him. But he won out on that all the time. You know, Harold was a winner in those matchups. But it was the pride that I took coming from Ohio State. Because guys, let me say this to you: when you step on a football field at the next level and you come from Ohio State, you have that respect. Now, sometimes it shows up differently, how it shows up from other players. Some players could be envy, jealous, disrespectful, but they know you're from Ohio State. So you should not disappoint. I'm hoping all those guys out there listening, don't disappoint them. Deliver what they expect you to do. They're expecting that you're going to be the best, and they're looking forward to that. So, but there was one thing I want to mention though, in terms of the player, and that is when we play in Philadelphia, we played the Browns, I think it was, in a preseason game. And God rest his soul, one of my dear friends, I don't know what, well, because Buddy Ryan, in my opinion, didn't know what the hell he was doing. Because anytime you're on the field and you need a free safety, Wes Hopkins, if he's on your team, he should be in that lineup in that position. No other position, free safety. Buddy moved Wes to that linebacker position, whatever it was. And, you know, I just thought that was the biggest mistake. But Wes and I were getting ready to prepare because we were playing the Cleveland Browns, and they had a tight end by the name of Ozzie Newsome. And we watched film, and plus we just knew how good Ozzie was. And I'll never forget it. Ozzie, I'm playing strong safety, and we're down in the red zone, and it's a pass play action pass. And Ozzie, you know, there's certain things that you do in the secondary, at least when we're trying to pick up on what a guy does. You watch his moves, you know, he'll make one move. That first one, he's just trying to get you off track. That second one, you know, it might be for real. But that third one, you got to go for that third one. You know, that's really he's going to get into his route there. Ozzie threw about 3 or 4 moves. He threw about 4 or 5 moves on me. And I ended up twisting my knee. And Wes used to call it Ozzie Newsome knee because I was trying to stay in my back pedal and everything and keep my inside position. And Ozzie, so Ozzie got me. And then, you know, Kellen Winslow, you know, I had a good game against Kellen Winslow, but, you know, great. You know, I was like, cool. Wow, Kellen Winslow, Ozzie Newsome. You know, so those are 2 tight ends that I faced that, you know, they were really challenging for me. And I'm like, wow. And Ozzie was in practice sometime when I was in Cleveland. Then I'm practicing against Ozzie, but, you know, Kellen was always playing against him. But yeah, those are some guys I thought about. Wow, this is Kellen Winslow. Wow, this is Ozzie Newsome. And but I did my best.
You played 2 memorable seasons with the Browns, 86, 87. And you were part of a great secondary with, Dixon, Minifield, Felix Wright. You guys watching the Browns back then, because I was a huge Browns fan before John's time. He hears stories. It just seemed to me that not only the secondary, but that whole defense, that everybody made everybody else better. Was that sort of the mindset of that Browns defense during those seasons?
Yeah, we were a very prideful group, and people did recognize us, and people, did acknowledge the fact that we were a good group, and we competed with each other. We wanted to be good. We wanted to do good, and it was disappointing to me both times, the drive and the fumble, but particularly, the drive, because they drove the ball 98 yards to tie the game, not to win the game, but to tie the game. Yeah. And for me, that was really disappointing, because, we didn't sack Jon at all, and we didn't intercept the pass. And that, I don't know if they ran the ball at all. I think all the plays were passing plays. So I'm not one of those guys. I don't like to put it on coaches. The coaches didn't call the right play. No, every play is designed with an outcome positive. The defense designed so that the defense will succeed if the players do what they're supposed to do. And, we just didn't do our job. We didn't do our job. And for that reason, I don't have AFC championship or Super Bowl championship rings.
Was Elway the toughest quarterback for you guys to defend because of his mobility, or was there somebody else that you said, when you had to face him, he's the toughest one that we have to face?
I don't think, Jon was mobile. He was elusive. But again, we didn't do our job. Our defensive line the secondary didn't do their job. The defensive line didn't do their job. So combined, the two of us, linebackers, throw them in there as well. The defense, in total, we just didn't do our job. There's times when you have to step up and somebody's got to make a play. And we just did not make a play. But I will give Jon credit. When it was time for him to deliver, he made plays. So he everything he's got, he deserved. He earned it. And so kudos to him, yes.
Ray, last couple things here for you as we kind of wrap up the podcast a little bit with you here. Wanted to get into a couple of things for you post-football now, and kind of how you've, I guess, continued your life in the game outside of playing in the game. You obviously stepped away from the game in 1987. What have you done since then, and what's been Ray Ellis's football life since he played the game of football that he loves so much?
Wow. Well, I've truly been blessed. I currently am now living in right outside the city of the city of Phoenix. My wife works for the city of Phoenix, but we live in a city called Mesa, Arizona. And I actually live here in Mesa, Arizona. I live in Arizona because my football experiences and life experiences have been good to me. They've shown me the United States of America. They provided me with an opportunity to get an education. They took me to a school where I met my wife. I've enjoyed things that I never thought I would be able to enjoy in life because of football, earnings and stuff like that. But, it's one of those things where when I played in the Fiesta Bowl my senior year, I said to myself, the lady who I've been married to now for 40 years, I called her. She was in St. Louis, Missouri. I never knew Missouri was the show me state. And so I called her and I told her, Arizona's a beautiful place. I mean, this is beautiful, and I'm like, this is the kind of place that when you retire, you might want to come live out here. And I'm just bouncing it off to her. And years later, she's from the show me state. So that place, Arizona, she's like, we should show me Arizona. So we brought our kids out here for spring break when they were little kids, and then we moved out here, you know. And when I left Philadelphia, I went into, always when I was a kid, I don't know, for whatever reason, I just thought about being in business and one day owning my own business. And I've been in several different businesses that I've had partners. We've started off in the printing business was my first experience. And then after the printing business, I was in the microbrewery business. And microbrewery business, we were actually the first microbrewery in a sporting arena that was an outdoor sporting arena. There was one that was an indoor sporting arena where they had, I think it was in Denver. Well, in Denver, the Colorado Rockies, they may have had a brew pub at their baseball stadium. And then we came, our beer company, microbrewery, was called Red Bell Brewing Company. And we developed a relationship with the sports teams in Philadelphia with the 76ers and the Flyers. And then the stadium, the Vet Stadium, wasn't owned by the Eagles, but we also had presence there. And I came up with these mighty, mini brew pubs, I called them. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, we were like the first. Never saw those anywhere. And I simply got an idea from my home. I had a bar in my home. And one time, the founder of Red Bell Brewing Company, Jim Bell, came to my home. And I sat him down at the bar because I had this concept. And, you know, in Ohio, in Columbus a lot, we have hot dog stands. And basically, guys would hook the hot dog stand up to the back of their car and they'd take it wherever they had to go. And then when they got to where they were going, they'd unhook it and go over there. Well, I told him, I sat him at my bar and I said, hey, imagine this bar you're sitting there right now. Think of it as a hot dog stand. And if you could take this bar and put some wheels up under it, and then we could go to different facilities and just roll up. And then we got kegs of beer. We just put the kegs under here and we just start serving beer. Well, you can see some of those in airports now. You didn't see those before, probably 1994. And we had some in the Philadelphia airport. We had some in Vet Stadium. And then we also had a brew pub where we actually made the beer on location and served our beer there. So that was another company I got involved in, Red Bell Brewing Company. Then I started getting involved with my church, and we were doing faith-based ministries, and we had job training programs there. And my pastor, my friend Herb Lust, God rest his soul, Reverend Dr. Herb Lust, used to be a running back for the Eagles. He was actually the first one who got on his knee and said a prayer in the end zone after scoring a touchdown. And credit him for that. We started an early childhood education center, a job training program. We also had job training program, early childhood education, and a charter school. And that kept me really, really, really busy because K through sixth graders, and there were a lot of them. And I'm laughing about that because I'm really proud about that, because a lot of those kids now have graduated from high school, from college. Their parents, they're doing a good job of contributing to society and to their community. And that was probably all the work that I did, I probably feel the best about that, impacting somebody's life in a positive way. That was really good. That charter school and program was called People for People in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And then after I left there, I moved to Philadelphia, and I was introduced to an opportunity to work with a digital media company. They were creating content, audio content, internet radio is a way to say this. And the company's called World Talk Radio, doing business as Voice America. And I built their their sports platform. So we had health and wellness business, and then I created for them a sports platform that was Voice America Sports. And I did my show on there for years, Ray Ellis Sports. And I worked with Troy Benson. I called Troy Benson, who was working for Roger Goodell, still is, I believe. And I talked to Troy, and I told Troy that, there's this new thing out here, the internet, and there's opportunities out here for, guys, a lot of guys, when they retire, they want to go into media, but in the local media, there's only so many radio stations. There's only one or a number of teams. So there's a limited amount of jobs that one could take on in that space of sports, providing sports content for entertainment. There's only one guy doing the sports at 6 o'clock, one guy doing 11 o'clock, maybe the same guy. But with internet radio, hey, man, there's many people in the world who want to do it. They can do it. They got a platform. And so I created that Voice America Sports platform because I knew there were guys who wanted to do this. Every team were going to be opportunities for guys who wanted to do a show. And we had 24 hours. And so I had a lot of guys. I probably produced about 20 shows. I was executive producer of about 20 guys who had an interest in radio. And I gave them their first chance. Voice America Sports, and I even had a show myself, but they're still out there, because one thing about it, internet radio, these podcasts, they're available on demand anytime, any place, anywhere, as long as you have access to the internet, download them, whatever. So it's been exciting for me, and more recently, myself and my good friend Dave Jingo have been working on what we call Pro Sports Legacy. And we want to do two things that we're really excited about doing: is sports documentaries and also esports competitions for whether it be high school or adults, but esports competitions. And I'm very excited about that. And Dave's excited about it. And we're going to make that happen. But I want guys to be able to tell their stories. If you make it to the National Football League, in your hometown, where you went to college at, where you played pro ball, that you've got a great support system, and people always want to hear about there. You're somebody's hero. Somebody admires you. Somebody likes the work that you put in, the work you're doing, the success you're having, and they spend their money to come watch you play. And it's always nice to, to be able to share some experiences with them and have conversation with them, and just tell stories about a play that they probably will always remember their lives too. I made a play that somebody probably remember. They probably at a stadium one time and I made a play they might remember if I start talking about it.
Ray Ellis, we appreciate so much you joining us. Former Philadelphia Eagle, Cleveland Brown, Ohio State Buckeye, McKinley Bulldog. A tremendous life in the game of football, and we so much enjoy you taking the time to join us on the official Pro Football Researchers Association podcast. Thanks for your time, Ray.
Well, guys, thank you for having me, and anytime you need me, just give me a call, shoot me a text, whatever. But special moment, and thank you so much.
Ray, thanks for your time.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, aka the Football History Dude, and I wanted to thank you for stopping by to listen to another episode here on the Sports History Network. Our podcasters are passionate about uncovering and sharing sports stories from yesteryear. And if you didn't know it already, we have over 30 shows across the network covering all sorts of sports history topics. In fact, here's a glimpse into one of our awesome podcasts here on the network.
Hello, football friends. This is Darren Hayes of the Pigskin Dispatch podcast, and I'd like to invite you to the portal of positive football history, Pigskin Dispatch and pigskindispatch.com. We talk about everything that centers around the game of American football, expert discussions, the origins of the games, the great players, teams, and coaches, and more, and some great guests and insights from experts. We have new episodes 3 to 4 times a week, and you can find us on sportshistorynetwork.com, pigskindispatch.com, or your favorite podcast provider.
How about that? I bet you're super hyped to go listen to that new podcast, right? Well, to learn about this show and all the other podcasts on the network, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com/podcast. Again, that's sportshistorynetwork.com/podcast. Head over there today to find your next favorite sports history podcast.